chainsaws, a cut-up pool, stains, fake blood, soaked clothing, digital tracking, and the beginnings of heartbreaking testimony from the medical examiner. We just got our hands on the transcript from another key day of David's preliminary hearing, the man accused of murdering a 14-year-old girl. Welcome to
David Anthony Burke bought a chainsaw before he needed an alibi. That's the detail that should stop you cold. Not after, not during some frantic scramble to explain a body. Before. And by the time investigators finished laying out the timeline, they weren't just describing a killing. They were describing a plan. 21 years old, a musician with real momentum.
His murderer was possibly tracked using digital data. We're talking about David Anthony Burke, by the way. David, 21-year-old musician who prosecutors allege met teen Celeste Rivas Hernandez and began engaging in a sexual relationship with her when she was
the kind of career trajectory that makes headlines feel inevitable. And according to prosecutors, that same young man spent months in a relationship with a girl who was 13 years old when it started. Celeste Rivas Hernandez. She should be somewhere right now worrying about homework, about friends, about nothing more serious than a curfew. Instead, her name is now permanently attached to one of the most disturbing preliminary hearings Los Angeles has seen in years. Here's the setup, stripped down to what prosecutors allege actually happened. David meets Celeste. He's 18. She's 13. That's not a gray area. That's a crime the moment it begins, and California law doesn't care how famous you're about to become or how many people are streaming your music. Continuous sexual abuse of a child under 14 is one of the most serious charges on the books, and it was filed here for a reason. Then comes April 23, 2025. Prosecutors say Celeste came to David's Hollywood Hills home. He'd allegedly called her an Uber to get her there. And from that point forward, the story prosecutors are telling gets darker by the minute. They allege she threatened to expose the relationship, that she said something that made it clear his career, his money, his entire public identity was about to collapse. And they allege that's the moment David made a choice. He stabbed her. And then, according to the case laid out in court, he didn't panic and call for help. He didn't try to undo what he'd done. He started planning how to make her disappear.
Calling her an Uber. This happened allegedly on April 23rd, 2025, and prosecutors claim he stabbed her to death after she allegedly threatened to expose their relationship, that he would lose it all, right? That he would lose his career, his money, all of it. He's also accused, by the way, of dismembering her. Her remains were found in an impound lot in a Tesla, allegedly registered to him back in September of last year.
This is where the case stops being about a relationship gone wrong and starts being about premeditation. And that word matters because it's the difference between manslaughter and first-degree murder with special circumstances. Special circumstances is legal language for this wasn't just intent to kill. This was intent plus something that makes it worse. In this case, prosecutors are pointing to the alleged sexual abuse of a minor as the aggravating factor. That's also why the death penalty hasn't been ruled out, not confirmed, not officially on the table yet, but possible.
Of last year. And after a multi-day preliminary hearing, a judge ruled that there's enough evidence for him to stand trial on charges of first-degree murder with special circumstances, continuous sexual abuse of a child under 14, and unlawful mutilation of human remains. He's pleaded not guilty to all charges.
Now, here's the part that should genuinely unsettle you. Investigators say that in the days after Celeste's disappearance, a series of packages started arriving at David's house.
In the garage. If you recall, prosecutors claim that after David allegedly killed Celeste, he purchased all this stuff to be delivered to this house. Chainsaws, a mop system, cadaver bags, laundry bags, a shovel, a blue inflatable pool.
Chainsaws, cadaver bags, laundry bags, a shovel, a blue inflatable pool. If you're hearing that and thinking, that's not a coincidence, that's a shopping list. You're not alone. That's exactly the inference prosecutors want the court to draw. And for months, the defense has had one consistent counter prove it. Show us the DNA on those exact tools. Show us this wasn't just props for a music video, because David was known for edgy, blood-soaked visual content. So let's go to the actual hearing, because this is where the case either holds or cracks.
So I want to get into the testimony from July 23rd, 2026. And it starts with the cross-examination of Lauren Wallace, a criminalist with the LAPD. Now, she had testified that she had found what appeared to be blood stains on these rubber mats on the floor of the garage at David's residence in the Hollywood Hills. That there was also what appeared to be slits, seemingly from a sharp...
LAB criminalist Lauren Wallace took the stand and testified about what she found in that garage, rubber floor mats that lit up under a chemical reagent designed to detect the possible presence of blood. Slits in those mats. Chainsaws recovered on site. But then the defense went to work, and this is where things get genuinely uncomfortable for the prosecution. Wallace admitted the chainsaws tested negative for blood.
I remember discussing that we tested the chainsaws and the results of those tests, and it was decided that they were not of forensic value. Question. And it was decided that no swabs of the handles of either of those garage chainsaws, testing them for touch DNA, would be taken. That's correct. The chainsaws did
No
not.
touch DNA was swabbed from the blades. A third electric saw found separately in a storage closet was never even collected for testing because it also came back negative.
During your search of 1368 Doheny Place, this is David's residence, you also found a third electric saw at the residence. Is that right? That is correct. And that was found by you or someone else? Answer, it was found by somebody else who was searching the interior of the residence. And who was that? I don't know who first observed the item. It was located in a storage closet. However, I was made aware of it, and it was tested with phenolphthalein, and that tested negative? That's correct. And did you collect that third saw for subsequent testing for DNA? No, because it tested phenonegative.
The defense's argument writes itself, if these were murder weapons, where's the evidence? You can't dismember a body with tools that show no trace of that body.
Here, okay, what the defense is trying to go with in my mind. It goes to the idea, again, in my opinion, not a thorough investigation, right? Not a thorough investigation by the detectives. Failure to properly process and collect material. But also, you can't find blood or forensic material on the chainsaws, meaning they weren't used in the killing or dismemberment. Is that a hole in your case, prosecution? What do you claim?
The defense pushed further, pointing to the fake blood found in trays and jugs in that same garage, consistent, they argued, with the music video explanation.
Merchandise that was being made in the garage area using fake blood, is that correct? We were aware that there were items that had been made using the fake blood, and we observed fake blood jugs and trays in the garage. And did you at any time collect any of that fake blood for analysis? We do not collect it for analysis. We did test it with the phenolphthalein, and it was negative. So that seems to me to set up an argument that all this stuff that David allegedly purchased or had at this residence wasn't to dismember Celeste and cover up a crime, but maybe
it's a real gap in the physical evidence, and the defense knows it. But here's what tips the scale back toward the prosecution timing. Every single one of these items. The chainsaws, the pool, the bags was allegedly purchased and delivered after Celeste arrived at that house and was never heard from again. You don't order dismemberment supplies for a music video the same week your girlfriend vanishes. That's not just suspicious. That's the kind of coincidence juries remember.
After she allegedly came to his home and was never heard from again, that would make it suspect, right? I think that's what the prosecution would argue. I mean, there's apparently no activity from her phone after she allegedly arrived to his place. So you buy all these supplies for a music video right after this. Again, I think that might make that argument tough. I think the argument from the prosecution would be that Celeste died and that this was a cover-up. But you're seeing the semblance.
And then there's the pool. Late B criminalist Lisa Leandro delivered what might be the single most damning piece of testimony in this entire hearing. The inflatable pool recovered from David's home had cuts, scalloped, linear.
Question. Let's first talk about a blue inflatable pool. Is that an item that you examined that was recovered from the defendant's home during a search warrant on September 17th of 2025? Yes. Question. All right. Did you also note whether or not there was any damage to that particular inflatable pool? Yes, I did. Now, in terms of the damage to the pool, I think you described them as cuts. There are damaged areas where there's straight, like linear cuts. And the edges, you said.
And fragments recovered during Celeste's autopsy physically fit into those exact cuts like matching puzzle pieces. Not similar, not consistent with a physical fit. That's forensic language for these two pieces used to be one piece, and it directly ties the pool in David's garage to Celeste's body.
Here. Well, I was requested to look at some material fragments that were collected by the medical examiner and then to compare those fragments to the damaged areas of the pool. Okay, and what did you find with respect to this fragment that came from the medical examiner's office? That it formed a physical fit with the pool in the area, specifically B. So the fragment A fit into the missing piece where there was damage or a cut? Correct. In other words, the blue fragments that were recovered from Celeste's body by the medical examiner's office during her autopsy allegedly matched the missing pieces from the inflatable.
The defense tried to undercut it by noting no formal tool mark analysis was performed, a fair technical point, but it doesn't erase the visual match a jury will see with their own eyes. Then the digital trail.
That day, William Rocker. So LAPD detective, cellular analyst. So this was about how digital evidence was used to potentially track David's movements after he allegedly killed Celeste on April 23rd at this home on Doheny. Question. So tell us what you've mapped out here at this particular time. So there's 3 towers that have timing advanced measurements, and those timing advanced measurements range from 11:01 p.m. to about 11:11 p.m. And during this time period, does it place the defendant or his cell phone within the vicinity of his residence at 1368 Doheny? Yes, that is
Cell
consistent.
tower data and Tesla location records place David's vehicle leaving his home late that night, heading towards Santa Barbara County, the same stretch of road where a California Highway Patrol worker later found Celeste's discarded passport 85 miles from Los Angeles.
That after allegedly killing Celeste, David made these trips to the Santa Barbara area. Apparently, a California Highway Patrol officer would testify that a state employee, merely doing traffic control along Highway 154 north of Santa Barbara, found Celeste's passport ID card that was discarded in a dirt patch off the road. So we're talking 85 miles away from LA. So David
The Tesla made that same trip more than once. And in the middle of all this, David allegedly called Celeste's phone after she was already gone. A call that went straight to an unreachable line. Prosecutors say that call wasn't concern. It was cover.
To who? To a 951-546-3161 number. 951-546-3161. And did the detectives identify for you who that phone number belonged to or was registered to? Yes, they advised me it belonged to the victim in this case. And when the defendant made a phone call at 12:04 in the morning, so now we're talking about it's after midnight, we're talking about April 24th, correct, of 2025? April 24th of 2025, that's correct. When the defendant's device made an outgoing call to the victim's cell phone at the 3161 number at 12:04, what was the result? The call went through. Okay, and did someone answer? Or from the records, what happened with that call? It did. That call appeared to have gone to voicemail.
A paper trail designed to make it look like he had no idea anything was wrong. The DNA results tie it together with numbers that are hard to argue with. Blood on the garage mats, on a Tesla charger plug, on a green tarp, inside the trunk, all matched to Celeste, with statistics putting the odds at over 1 septillion to 1. That's not a coincidence. That's confirmation.
Statistic that was generated in order to explain the significance of that inclusion? Yes. And what was that? The statistic associated is the DNA profile matches the DNA profile obtained from Celeste Rivas. A DNA profile is at least...
And then there's the part of this hearing that has nothing to do with legal strategy and everything to do with a 14-year-old girl who deserved so much more than what happened to her. The medical examiner testified that her body showed dismemberment to the extremities.
What were your initial observations? So the first thing that I observed was the body is markedly decomposed, which would interfere with essentially our autopsy examination. The other things I noted were that there were trauma to the body with consisting of dismemberment, particularly the extremities. Did you also notice if there was any type of hardware in the oral cavity? Yes, they were essentially braces. I just wanted to highlight that because it reflects a few things, maybe the state.
That she still had braces. Braces, a detail so small and so human it cuts through every clinical word used around it. DNA profile, forensic value, physical fit, and reminds you that this case isn't an academic exercise in evidence chains. It's about a child. The defense will keep hammering the gaps. No blood on the chainsaws, no tool mark analysis. An analyst on the stand who didn't personally run the lab work.
An item of evidence. Are there certain well-known inherent limitations as to what any analyst can say about that DNA? Can you clarify the question? Yes, well, you can't say when DNA got on a particular item, correct? That's correct. Okay, and you can't say how long the DNA may have been on the item of evidence. That's correct. And you can't even say how the mechanism...
Those are real questions a jury will have to sit with. But a judge has already ruled there's enough here to send this to trial on first-degree murder with special circumstances, continuous sexual abuse of a child under 14, and unlawful mutilation of human remains. David Burke has pleaded not guilty to all of it. What happens next determines whether the system holds someone accountable for what the evidence increasingly suggests was not panic, not self-defense, but a plan, one item on a shopping list at a time. Subscribe, stay with this case, because when the trial date is set, you're going to want to already understand exactly what's at stake.